Revision. How you turn a first draft into a book people actually want to read. Everything from plot holes to continuity errors to pacing to character issues to basic grammar and punctuation all get weeded out during the revision process. The list of things I just listed should tell you why revision is important. Any first draft, even one written by an experienced writer, is going to have problems. And revision is how you find and correct those problems. Every single manuscript needs to go through at least one round of revision, in most cases more than one. Revising a novel-length work is a monumental task and generally takes longer than writing the first draft. To help you cope with this mountain of work, we're going to be spending the next couple of weeks talking about revision, different methodologies and techniques, the different kinds of issues to look out for, and how to go about it. Before we talk about all of that, though, I want to talk about a few things that you should do before you even begin the revision process. By doing these things beforehand, you'll be better prepared and ultimately have a much better time when you actually start revising. So with that, here are 3 tips to help you with revision before you actually start doing revision. That line could have used some revision. Tip number 1, take a step back. The first thing you should do when you finish your first draft is nothing, at least nothing to do with that first draft. It is recommended by almost everyone that before you start revision of your book, you should first spend some time away from it. Put it away and focus on other projects or take a break from writing entirely, anything that will put the book out of your mind for a time. How long you should do this varies from person to person. I've seen recommendations for as little as 2 weeks to up to 6 months. I would argue you want to spend as much time away from the project as possible, but the ideal time to step away from a project is going to vary, and understanding why you should step away will help determine how long you should step away for. There's a few good reasons for putting a project aside for a time before jumping into revision. If you're feeling burned out or bored of the project after writing the first draft, then you will likely welcome a break from it. Some time away will also make the story less fresh in your mind. You will forget some of the details, which can be a big help with the next step in the process. Tip number 2, after some time away, read the whole book from the perspective of someone who never has. Most of the people who read your book for the first time will not have read it before. You may be shocked to hear that, but it's true, and these are the people you need to be concerned about. This is why taking some time away can be good, because when you come back, you'll be more in the mindset of someone who hasn't read the book before. While you will still be somewhat familiar with it, unless you've managed to completely blank it from your memory, after some time away, you can better identify anything that would confuse a first-time reader. Maybe some vague world-building information or group dialogue scenes that aren't clearly voiced. A certain aspect of a character may not be coming through as clearly as you would like, or there might be some plot threads that are just generally confusing. It's hard to know what these problems are if you're very familiar with the story, because your brain will have information that the reader doesn't necessarily have. Reading the book from start to finish will also help you identify major problems with the story or with the prose. When you're in the drafting phase or in the revision phase, you tend to focus on one scene and spend a lot of time with it. This can make you lose a broader perspective on the story as a whole. Reading the book from start to finish will force you to think about the story as a whole and help you to identify major problems with the story or with the prose. At this stage, you don't want to actually start fixing any of these things, just taking note of them as you read through the entire story. What you want to end up with is a holistic view of the problems in your manuscript, everything from scenes that are missing or need to be rewritten to smaller recurring problems with the flow of the prose. Some people will recommend that you print off your manuscript and read through it that way, noting problems as you go by hand directly on the page. Other people will do this read through on the computer and just note problems in their document. I don't think the method, whether printed or digital, is as important as making sure that you approach this like someone who has never read the book before, and that you identify the problems by reading through the text from beginning to end. And once you've figured out what those problems are, tip number 3, make a list of all the problems you need to revise. Once you've read through your whole book and identified the problems, you should write those problems down. Make a list of every issue you've identified. If it's specific to a scene, note down what scene it is. If it's a recurring problem, then you may want to note everywhere that it occurs. If there are scenes that need to be added, decide where they are going to be in the story and what needs to happen in them. You can either build this list as you're doing your read-through, or you can take some brief notes and then build the list after. Regardless of whether you build it as you're doing your read-through or build it after you finish the read-through, once you have the list compiled, it should give you a nice breakdown of everything you need to do once the revision actually begins. This will form a sort of checklist of items that you can begin working through. Some people like to organize this list by the complexity or the difficulty of the items. Maybe you start with the major structural changes like adding entire scenes in, and then work on the scenes that just need to be rewritten, and then move on to smaller, less complicated items like fixing repetitive words. Another approach is to move through the list as the items appear in the story. So you basically start at the beginning of the manuscript and fix issues page by page. There are trade-offs to each approach, and how you prioritize these items is a matter of personal preference, really. I would say experiment and find something that works for you. One thing that I would advise is you prioritize the bigger changes first and then move to the smaller ones. It doesn't make much sense to go through a scene and replace a bunch of clunky word choices when that entire scene is going to be rewritten later on, or cut out entirely. Like a lot of things with writing, revision bears doing some upfront planning. You may be eager to start right away, but without having a solid plan of what you need to do, you're probably going to waste a lot of effort. Hopefully, by doing some of the things that I've outlined here, you will be better prepared for when you actually start your revision. Next week, I think we'll dive into some of the common problems you're likely to find in your first draft and how to address them. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.